Okay, everyone. Welcome back. I am Kris. This is Khalid Al Walid. Not Al. Yeah, it's Al. That's what he wanted. He wanted everyone to call him Al. It's an unknown fact that I just made up. This is a legendary military general, the first from Dr. Omar. I spent a lot of time drafting this story to bring it out to the world, as everyone knows. Before we get started, thumbs up, subscribe. I don't know what that was for my eye. And then you can donate to the channel through the thanks button, request a video, your name sponsoring that video. You couldn't have sponsored this video because you wouldn't have known about him had it not been for me. Let's just constantly praise me for bringing him out. Yep. Just keep on telling yourself that, Kris. I'm not eating fruit anymore because I've moved on to veggies. Oh, when I don't feel good, I load up on. Well, it's not feeling bad, but I just try to eat better. You know, if your body doesn't feel like, if it feels very eat good. Hopefully your body is like, oh, we appreciate that. I could eat a lot of candy, but that's not going to help. Okay. Be another 23-ish minute video. Let's go.
Khalid is a sword from the swords of Allah that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has unsheathed against the disbelievers. So Abu Bakr is saying, I've calculated this and I have my excuse before Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. I believe that he's the right man for the job. Even if he's been Muslim for just a few years, even if he's made some mistakes in his early days of being a Muslim, Khalid radiallahu ta'ala anhu is the right commander of the Muslims. So Abu Bakr sends him forward, and Khalid radiallahu anhu, of course, attains victory over Musaylim al-Kadhab in the Battle of Yamama, which is a huge victory. And there were many of the Sahaba that fought under Khalid radiallahu ta'ala anhu there. And then Khalid radiallahu ta'ala anhu was able to basically quell many of the apostates. There were many different false prophets and apostates that were arising. So he was able to defeat many of these pockets that were rebelling against the new Khilafah, against Abu Bakr radiallahu ta'ala anhu. Now, what bordered the Muslims were the Persians, the Persian Empire. And this is really important because Abu Bakr radiallahu ta'ala anhu actually had envisioned, in accordance with what the Prophet ﷺ had mentioned, engaging the Roman Empire first. The Muslims are literally situated between the Persians and the Romans. They're on both sides. And so initially, that was the plan, was to engage the Roman Empire first, not the Persian empires are situated between them. But the Persian Empire were directly inciting the ridda of the Arabs on the border. Okay? They were directly inciting some of the revolts against Abu Bakr radiallahu ta'ala anhu, and generally speaking, had a more hostile posture towards the Muslims. Both of them, of course, the whole story of Mu'tah was because an ally to the Roman Empire killed the Muslim emissary, right? So they both had their hostility, and it was both sort of like, we're going to push this new tribe around, these little guys around, right? And let them know that we're going to fight each other while they're nothing. But Abu Bakr radiallahu ta'ala anhu saw that it was important strategic to now engage the Persian Empire instead. So initially, while Hurub al-Ridda are taking place, while the apostasy wars are taking place, Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu says, Al-Muthanna ibn Haritha radiallahu ta'ala anhu, to keep them at bay. And Al-Muthanna radiallahu anhu is able to keep them at bay in many different ways. And then he sends a letter to Khalid radiallahu ta'ala anhu to proceed towards Al-Iraq after Hurub al-Ridda, after the apostasy wars, and to engage them as well, right? That it's time to fight them as well, right? And of course, the aggressions are coming from that side, and so now is your turn to move towards them. So he receives that order, and in the letter of Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu says that whoever wants to come home can, meaning this is not a mandatory battle, right? This is for whoever wants to stay with you. So initially his army dwindles from 13,000 to 2,000. And then he asks Abu Bakr radiallahu ta'ala anhu for reinforcements. Abu Bakr sends him the man who's equal to 1,000 men, Al-Qa'qa' radiallahu ta'ala anhu, as his main reinforcement. And then there are other Muslims that come from Medina to join the effort with Khalid radiallahu ta'ala anhu to move now on the Persian Empire, the most aggressive and the most brutal and the most violent empire of the day. Even more violent and more brutal than the Roman Empire, right? This was a hostile empire that used to always have statement victories, right? And of course they were at war with the Romans forever before the Muslims came along. And this is where you see now the battle of Dhatus Salasil, the battle of the chains, which we'll talk about. So if you were to break down all of Khalid's battles, right, it's about 100 campaigns. It's a lot. We're not going to be able to cover all of them, so I just want to sort of focus on the main ones that represent a turning point for Khalid radiallahu ta'ala anhu and the Muslims. Dhatus Salasil, the battle of the chains. So Khalid radiallahu ta'ala anhu eyed, basically they're going into the southern area of Iraq. Okay, the Persian Empire, of course, has Iraq as well. And the center of the Persian Empire at the time is actually in Iraq. It's not in what is modern day Iran, right? It's actually in Madain, which would be close to Baghdad and the center of their empire. So he initially sees, Khalid radiallahu anhu targets what's known as Al-Ubulla. Al-Ubulla is the main port for the Persian Empire. And Khalid radiallahu ta'ala anhu makes his move and he sends a letter to Hormuz. Hormuz is the commander of the Persian Empire under Kisra, who's the main head, so Hormuz. So he sends a letter to Hormuz telling him, giving him basically his options, right? Submit to Islam and be safe, aslam taslam, or agreeing to the payment of the jizya, and you and your people will be under our protection, or else you have only yourself to blame for the consequences. And he says to him a very famous sentence. He says, لَقَدْ جِئْتُكُمْ بِقَوْمٍ يُحِبُّونَ الْمَوْتِ كَمَا أَنْتُمْ تُحِبُّونَ الْحَيَاةِ. That I'm bringing you a people who love death as much as you love life. Like, we're not afraid of you. Hormuz gets this letter and he's like, really? These little Bedouins, right? We've been pushing them around and beating up on them all these years. In fact, Quraysh was basically a client of the Persian Empire. Right? Like, these guys think they can fight us back now. They think they have a chance against us. So Hormuz,
you can't be arrogant because you're instantly looking down on your opponent and you're judging your opponent by what they were 50 years ago, 100 years ago. But new people, you're not going to have the same fighters that you did before. They may not be as good. And the fighters you're going against could be better. I don't know what that was for. It's very uncalled for. It's very rude. Dogs are stupid.
Sends 20,000 fighters in chains and in heavy armor. Now, what does it mean to send them in chains? The Persians had a very interesting battle tactic. They had a lot of numbers, and what they would do is they would put chains across their own legs, all right? To where they were like a wave, a fort that could not be moved. And they would overwhelm you with their numbers. Okay, they'd move towards you, and they were chained to each other. Not fully like chained, but they would have a cuff on one leg to the next person. They were chained to each other. And they would come forth with their swords and with their advanced artillery. They were known to have better weapons, more advanced weaponry than anyone else in the world at the time. So the idea was, we just overwhelm you with force. These little Bedouin Arabs, we're just going to mow them, right? Just go over them without any type of issue. And one of the things about Khalid radiallahu anhu, and one of the things that makes him the most brilliant commander of all time, is that every single battle of Khalid, he has some tricks that he doesn't use in the battle before. So he's completely unpredictable. Completely unpredictable. But there's
and I'm gonna adapt this to him, but there's a story about military people fighting the United States, and they said America, war is chaos, and America pretty much just lives in it in terms of out on the battlefield, and wherever you're set up across and you're looking wherever you think they're going to attack, they being the US, wherever you think they're going to attack, they're going to attack in the areas where you're not paying attention, because war is unconventional. Conventional war, you can still make it unconventional, and chaos and throwing your opponent up and not expecting, like, that's huge. War is chaos, and Khalid thrives in it. So he has an ability to where even if you think we are secure, we're good, you don't know what his mind is creating. And you don't realize that he can do things that can get you disorganized a little bit. Maybe get some people over here to attack your side and then pull back. And then your guys step forward. And now you're not in this protective line as you were. And then he has people come over here and get you from, flank your side. There's a lot of things he can do. I mean, he never lost a battle, right? The only battle he lost is the battle he first took over, and he tried to get everyone to retreat. So when you're dealing with somebody like that, you have to be perfect. He just has to be good, average. You have to be perfect on everything, every step, every thrust, every bow and arrow. You have to be perfect. Now think about how impossible that is. Yeah, he's gonna falter and he's gonna screw up, but in his mind, it's like he accepts that I'm not gonna be perfect, but my plan will work. And you're the opponent. You have to be perfect, but you know you won't be, and eventually, his plan will work. It's almost unfair, and it's devastating to think of, because you give him enough time, he wins. Unless you plan on coming out, sneak attacking, and then taking off running and saying, "We won!" All right, well, how many of you were killed running away? You may have won the first strike. You killed 9 people, and then your whole crew ran away, and he killed 300 of you as you were running. Well, who really won? You have to be perfect. He doesn't have to be. He doesn't have to be. And that's what's dangerous, because you can't be perfect. There's never been a perfect war. There's been battles that have been like beautiful, like, oh my goodness. Never been a perfect war. It's hard. He's also, I did a video on him before. Well, I've done several videos, but he's listed, I want to say, maybe the 5th best general in the history of the world. It's pretty big. I think he got higher marks than Alexandria the Great. Alexandria the Great. You probably know the male version of that, Alexander the Great. Napoleon was on there. Ulysses S. Grant was on there. I don't want to spoil it for you, but Napoleon was number 1. Genghis Khan was on there. That one guy was on there. That other guy. Remember the one guy who won that one battle at that one place? He's on there. Whoever he was. Yeah, that was a pretty interesting video though. But yeah, like I'm saying, war's chaos, and that's where he thrives. And it's kind of like he has a plan and he knows my plan may not succeed, but if my plan gets followed through, people are going to screw up. People are going to die on his end. But as long as the plan goes from A, B, C, D, E, F, G, all the way to Z, he won. You just have to stop it. And now look at it like no one ever did. But you're going to be that first person. Sure you are.
Never a battle with Khalid radiallahu anhu where it's just face to face. He's always got something up his sleeve. So Khalid, largely, his main tactic is optical illusions. That's what he did in Mu'tah too. Right? He makes you think his army is somewhere and they're not really there. So Khalid radiallahu anhu makes it seem like he's in a place called Kaldima, which is south. Okay? Al-Abulla is here, Kaldima is here. So they march towards Kaldima and they realize that Khalid radiallahu anhu just put up a bunch of props there and his army's not actually there. So then it's like peekaboo, we're actually up here. He was actually in a place that was north, which was known as Al-Hafir. And so Hurmuz's army gets the word that Khalid's army is actually in Al-Hafir. So they move towards Al-Hafir. When they do that, Khalid radiallahu anhu takes his army around and then they come back to Kaldima. Then his army gets the message that they're back here. So they come back south and he moves again. Why is he doing that? Because he's exhausting them.
I was just about to say, he's wearing them out. Yes, he's getting tired too, but they don't know where he is. And so they're constantly moving. He's moving to a direction. Okay, we're going to stay here. The word gets out that here we are. Now we know they're coming. Okay, now we're going to go over here. They have to come all the way here. Then he just kind of gets out of the way. And then, okay, we're going to go over here. We get to stop and rest. Because now the word gets back to them. They're in a constant chase. They're chasing the tail. You ever seen a dog spin in circles trying to bite its own tail? Stupid over here does that. And I'm pointing not to me, to the dummy laying back over here. They just chase their own tail and then they stop and they're like, and then what's he do? Wiggles his tail. Hey, still here. And so he just keeps moving and just keeps letting, he might as well just be letting him know himself. Yep, we're back over here now. Hey, we're over here now. Hey, we're up here now. And you want to kill him so much because now he's embarrassing you. And now you really want to kill him. But all you're doing is just wearing yourself out so that once a battle comes, you're kind of like, yeah, now we're going to fight. Oh, you know what we should have done? We should have taken that rest. We should have went to bed, and got a good sleep. We should have got some food. Should have got some more water. But now it's battle time. He had plenty of food, plenty of water, plenty of rest. We didn't. This was a mistake.
They're in chains and they're walking through the desert with the chains on their legs and they're getting exhausted. So he's exhausting their army. And then he scares them from one side and so they move towards one direction. So basically he gets them paranoid and they wouldn't sleep at night because they'd be worried where Khalid radiallahu anhu's army is going to pop up from. And by the time they actually make it to fight him, to come into combat, they're so exhausted and worn out from just the amount of movement that they've had to do. So this was something completely unanticipated, right? They'd never faced this type of an opponent before. Hormuz actually sends a message.
Also, if that other army wanted to fight him, he's not, no matter how many people he has, he's not obligated to fight the war that they want on the grounds that they pick. He doesn't have to. But they're the fools for continuing to chase. Just stop. Stop chasing and make him come to you. And even then, it's not guaranteed. Because once he knows where you are, then he's pretty much going to come up with a plan of how to take you out. Oh, I know where they are. I know that whole train. I know that city. I know the best way to have a siege on it. A siege? A siege. You know? Yeah. It's not fun.
To Kisra, like, this is weird. Different things are happening here. We need help. So Kisra blocks off, he sends some reinforcements to block off the Euphrates, block off any type of access to water. So basically Khalid radiallahu anhu's army will suffer from dehydration. SubhanAllah, Khalid radiallahu anhu says to the army to put your trust in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It just so happens that it rains upon them, and they were able to fill all of their water skins, and so that tactic failed. So then they finally meet in battle after days of just exhaustion, right? Moving them from one place to the other, and the Muslims are fresh, outnumbered, but fresh. So Khalid radiallahu anhu's tactic was attack, retreat, attack, retreat, attack, retreat, attack, retreat. So it's all of these false attacks to where they're just tired, okay? And Hurmuz wants to make a statement. So Hurmuz calls out for Khalid, right? The Arabs used to duel before battle. Every empire of the day had a different way of starting off a battle. So Hurmuz calls out for Khalid, says come out to a duel, which seems really bold because no one duels with Khalid. But Hurmuz has planned that he actually tells 3 of his most skilled fighters to stand in the front row, and once the battle starts, he basically is going to trick him and then come out and just kill him. Right? Come out and kill him before the battle even ends, right? Before the duel ends. So Khalid radiallahu anhu, of course, does not back down from the challenge, but he's not dumb, right? Khalid radiallahu ta'ala anhu comes out, and just after a few swipes, Hurmuz, who's also a skilled fighter, a skilled general, he tells him, you know what, let's drop the weapons, let's do hand-to-hand combat. Right? All right, fine. Khalid radiallahu anhu drops the weapons, Hurmuz drops the weapons, and as soon as they basically fight hand-to-hand in hand-to-hand combat, the 3 men rush. Al-Qa'qa' radiallahu ta'ala anhu was on to their plan. So Al-Qa'qa' would rush as soon as they rushed, and subhanAllah, the 3 men got there before Al-Qa'qa' in the duel. Khalid was so strong that he basically picked up Hurmuz and used him to protect himself until Al-Qa'qa' radiallahu anhu came and he finished them off. And then Khalid killed Hurmuz, which was a huge sign of defeat for the Persian Empire. Like, to lose your general in the duel in the very start is extremely demoralizing. They're already exhausted, their legs are in chains, and so when Khalid radiallahu anhu kills Hurmuz, it basically, already signifies their defeat.
Yeah, if I'm witnessing my general get killed, I'm just standing there like, yeah, ooh, who's got a key? Because I want to get out of these stupid chains. This is a terrible idea. I'm glad he's dead now. Nobody, he had the key? Yeah, well, this might backfire on us. Well, we can't ask one of you to go. We all have to go. And that means we're all going to be... He could just hop on a horse and go right on down the line and just cut our heads off and keep going. This was a mistake, fellas.
And after Hurmuz was dead, it took them very little time to basically decimate that particular army. And that was the first defeat, right? Which was...
I would be saving myself. They're all trying to fight, and I would be like, look, I was told I could come here and buy a boat from somebody. That's all I'm here for. I'm not here for fighting. I'm just here to buy a boat. They would be like, I don't know. He seems sincere. I do want to stab him just once, though. I'd be like, no stabbing, please. You can come for a ride on my boat if you have one. But I would prefer to be stabbed free when I acquire said boat. And they'd be like, He seems trustworthy. I'm going to let him go. But we can't get the chains off, so let's just cut his feet off and let him crawl away. I'd be like, you know what? I'll figure it out. You kill all these guys, and I'll figure out how to get out of here. It's fine. Give me your email, though, and we'll get in touch later on for my boat christening. I'm a coward, is what I'm trying to say.
The Battle of the Chains. A major defeat. They come back with the ghanima, by the way, the spoils. And they say that was the first time Medina saw an elephant, because they took one of the elephants as well and brought an elephant with them back to Medina from the spoils of battle. You also had some of the Persians that converted to Islam after this. So some of the soldiers convert to Islam, some of the people convert to Islam. But Khalid radiallahu ta'ala anhu continues his advance into southern Iraq at the time. You have what's known as Datul Nahar, the battle of the river, where once again Khalid radiallahu ta'ala anhu was able to take from the area of the Euphrates a position and is able to kill up to 30,000 Persian soldiers according to some of the narrations. And one of the tactics that he utilized was Khalid radiallahu anhu took out the generals first, because he kind of realizes that the generals are the morale of the Persian Empire, that they had a great emphasis that was placed on the generals. So Khalid plots on the generals before he plots on the others, and he thinks about their morale before he thinks about how he moves forward. Then he moves to central Iraq, which is at the fort of Anbar. The fort of Anbar is only about 80 miles away from Babylon. Khalid radiallahu anhu sees this huge army right at the fort. And he's like, I know exactly what to do. He brings 1,000 archers and he says, take out the eyes. The skilled archers, he basically takes out the eyes, and it actually became known as Ma'rika al-Uyun, the Ma'rika of the Uyun, the battle of the eyes, because Khalid radiallahu anhu basically blinds that army and then attacks them, and Khalid radiallahu anhu takes that position as well. So he's moving through, and Kisra, who's the head of the Persian Empire, who's obviously been fighting the Romans this entire time, is like, what is happening here to where all of a sudden we're incurring this type of loss here? And Khalid is employing a different tactic every time. We can't figure him out in this regard. And there's also, subhanAllah, narration, it's in Fadal al-Sahaba by Imam Ahmad rahimahullah and others, that they reached an area of Al-Hira, and the Majus had a lot of magicians. So they told Khalid radiallahu anhu in one of the battles, they said, look, if you drink our poison, we'll surrender to you. Khalid radiallahu anhu said, give me the poison. He said, Bismillah, he drank the poison, nothing happened to him. Right, threw it to the side. Don't try this at home. If someone gives you poison, first of all, the narration has some kalam in it, has some words about it. Secondly, if someone gives you poison, don't say Bismillah and drink and say, nothing happened to me. You're not Khalid bin Walid radiallahu ta'ala anhu. Right? And the Sahaba had karamat, so if anything, this was a miracle of one of the companions, but the point is that it completely humiliated the Persians, and the Muslims had even more confidence, right? After Khalid radiallahu anhu basically said, that's the best you've got, tossed it aside like it was nothing, right? And it did not affect his body at all. So the Persians are shocked. The Persian Empire is shocked. The Roman Empire is starting to catch wind about what's happening, right? And basically what happens is these two empires that have been fighting each other for over 700 years basically kind of have like a de facto agreement. You know what, let's take a break from fighting each other and let's deal with these guys, because they're a nuisance to us, right? We've got to wipe out these people in the middle that we thought were just our little client kingdoms that we could just, pitch around to each other. So
the Romans called the Persians and they're like, listen, we really want to kill you guys, but these other guys keep killing you before we can get to you. So we're going to have to team up and kill them so we can get back to killing each other the way the Lord wanted it to be. And the Persians are like, sounds good to us.
They basically agree to take a break in an informal way despite their heated battles amongst themselves and say, listen, we're going to do away with them. And so now you shift towards Sham, which is greater Syria, Palestine, Syria, Jordan, Lebanon. Abu Bakr radiallahu ta'ala anhu sent 4 commanders towards Sham. He sent Amr ibn al-As radiallahu ta'ala anhu towards the area of Palestine, which we're going to talk about. And obviously, the areas are not delineated in the exact same way back then, right? But to the area generally of Palestine was Amr ibn al-As radiallahu ta'ala anhu. To the area of Damascus was Yazid ibn Abi Sufyan radiallahu ta'ala anhu. Then he sent Shurahbil ibn Hasana radiallahu ta'ala anhu towards the area of Jordan, the area of Al-Urdun. And then he sent Abu Ubaidah ibn Jarrah radiallahu anhu to the area of Hims. The area of Hims, also in Syria. So he's got, Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu is engaging the Roman Empire at the time, the Byzantines at the time. But Abu Ubaidah ibn Jarrah radiallahu anhu asks Abu Bakr for reinforcements radiallahu ta'ala anhu against the Romans, because things are getting very difficult. The Roman Empire is starting to turn up the heat, so he basically asks for help in engaging the Roman Empire. Abu Bakr radiallahu ta'ala anhu sends a letter to Khalid bin Walid radiallahu anhu, who is in Iraq, and basically says, I need you to turn towards Ash-Sham. I need you to hurry up to Ash-Sham because things are becoming difficult for the Sahaba that are in Ash-Sham at the time. And this also becomes one of the miracles of Khalid radiallahu ta'ala anhu. So Khalid radiallahu ta'ala anhu basically gathers his advisors, and his main dalil, which was basically his guide, the guy that would map out the terrain for him, map out the route for him, was a man by the name of Rafi' ibn Umayrah. So he asked Rafi' ibn Umayrah, he says, give me the routes. How do we get to Ash-Sham? What's the quickest way there? He says, you've got, the northern route, which is along the Euphrates to northeast modern day Syria. It's a well-traveled route. And how did you used to measure routes back then? What do you think? If you're traveling with an army, what do you measure routes by? Someone tell me something that I can make out. What is it? Days. Okay, time. What else? What do you need along the route?
Landmarks? Feet. What you want to do is you want to go 9,000 steps that way, right? Then go 6 steps to the right, and then another 41,000 steps.
7-Elevens? Water, exactly. Water, mashallah, you need water, right? So basically back then, if you're mapping out a large army moving from one direction to another, you're really analyzing where the wells are. You're looking at the time span, you're looking at the difficulty of the terrain, you're looking at...
I apologize. I said landmarks, but I was thinking water. But I said landmarks, so I thought water, but that's not what came out. So I'm going to say I was incorrect, because you mean landmarks. You could say like trees, mountains, rivers, lakes, a bucktooth goat, a lobster man. These are valid. Wells would be the better answer.
Villages along the way. You're looking at, again, the Romans and the Persians basically owned everything, right? So you either worked for the Romans or you worked for the Persians. You're analyzing all these different things, but water is a huge part of this, how you plan your route. So Rafi'...
water is vital if you're walking through a desert. So I would say yes. Wish this light would go off. Thank you. I would say water is the most vital source, because 3 days without water is the max you can do? And now you add in a desert, so it's got to be less than that. So yeah, I would say water. Definitely 107 million %. I don't even think that's a real number percentage.
Umayrah, he gives him 2 routes. He said, you've got along the Euphrates, or you have along the route which is known as Ain al-Tamr, right? It's an easy march, but it's a longer march around the south. And then Khalid radiallahu anhu says, give me a route that no one's ever taken before. I need to march terrain. We need to move in a way that's completely unpredictable, that's fast, and that's never been taken before. So Rafi' says, listen, there's one route, but there is no water on this route. The terrain is difficult. No army's ever marched it. You're not going to see water for over 100 miles. And actually, if you map the point of Khalid's departure, there isn't a single well for 120 miles. So imagine you've got to basically keep yourself hydrated and make it through the hot desert and through the terrain without water. Khalid radiallahu anhu says, Tawakkalna ala Allah, that's the one we're taking. Rafi' is like, Ya Amir, this is not easy. You might lose your army along the way. Khalid says, Tawakkalna ala Allah, we're going to trust in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. We will find our way through that terrain and we will make our way over there. So Khalid radiallahu anhu says, where's the first well? Rafi' can remember, there's one narration, he remembered a little spring under a tree, because he's a dalil, he's well traveled around that area. A little spring, again, over 100 miles out. So Khalid's like, all right, that's the point that we're going to make our way to. So we're going to assess our days by that point. And when they got there, subhanAllah, days later, Rafi' couldn't find the spring. And so the Muslims made dua, they looked for this thorn tree, And eventually, they were able to dig under the roots of that tree, and the spring came out, and Kabbaru al-Muslimin, the Muslims were saying Allahu Akbar, and it was a matter of ease for them. So that's one thing that happened along the route. There's another historical narration that shows up in some of the books that Khalid radiallahu ta'ala anhu employed a strategy which was to fill the camels with water and then to prevent them from eating. And then once you run out of water, there's a particular part of the camel that stores the water. You sacrifice the camels and you're able to access that water. So it's a very, very tedious type of tactic, but Khalid radiallahu anhu employs that. So he fills the camels with water when they have access to water. 3 days into it, after the heat gets to them and they run out of water, they sacrifice the camels and they access basically where the water is stored within the body of the camel. I think you're all getting the point that Khalid radiallahu anhu always has a solution, right? I just want you to imagine if you're a Muslim and you're in that day and age, the guy is unfazed by absolutely anything and he's always got a solution. Which is why, by the way, in Uhud, most people, when the Prophet ﷺ and the Muslims at that time defeated them, most people were like, let's go back to Mecca. We've done this before. It was Badr. Khalid said, no, we got our way around. Because Khalid is that type who's always like, I've got a solution. I can figure this out, I can figure this out, I can figure this out. So in any case, they reach into Sham. Khalid radiallahu ta'ala anhu reaches to Abu Ubaidah ibn Jarrah radiallahu ta'ala anhu. Abu Ubaidah ibn Jarrah sees him and he smiles. He's reassured. Khalid radiallahu anhu comes to him. And the nickname of Khalid was Abu Sulaiman. And he said, Abu Ubaidah radiallahu anhu says that I received the letter from Abu Bakr as-Siddiq radiallahu anhu about your coming. And he said, there is no resentment in my heart. And alhamdulillah, we're basically pleased to serve under you. Like Khalid radiallahu anhu is going to come and basically assume the leadership of all of the battalions at that point in Sham. And Khalid radiallahu anhu starts to praise Abu Ubaidah radiallahu anhu. He says, ذَاكَ بِأَنَّكَ أَمِينُ هَذِهِ الْأُمَّةِ. That's because you're the Amin, the trustworthy one of this ummah. That's why you don't have these spiritual... You always think in the interest of the ummah. Like Abu Ubaidah ibn Jarrah radiallahu anhu did not send a letter to Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu saying, I've got it covered. He's thinking in the interest of the ummah, and you're not thinking about yourself or trying to be the hero or trying to be a brave person. You're always putting the interests of the ummah first.
We're going to go ahead and stop part 2 right there. And we will be back with part 3. Finish out the fantastic story that I have written for all of you so that we all know this man a little bit more. I did like when I said that on the first video, and a few of you were just like, yeah, we appreciate you bringing him forward. I was like, hey, you get it. There was a few people like, what? I was just like, oh, never mind. All right, so we're going to end it there. I apologize for talking a little too much. But anyways, till next time, have a good day, have a good night.